All right, we are live. Okay, whole goal for today with this webinar is in 30-ish minutes or so, we'll just go through kind of the modern processes and tools that are being used to produce these audit-ready classifications, or just classifications you can defend years on, months on, etc., very quickly, using sort of new tools, new frameworks, and in an industry where it's sort of a little bit caught in the past with spreadsheets and all that. Just helping people become aware of kind of the options that are available and the methods that are being used to document things quickly and kind of cover you well into the future. So without further ado, my name is Brendan. I've been a systems engineer actually for about 12 years. That is my background. I think like most people sort of randomly got into trade at some point when I had friends that were doing it, and I said, how hard could it be to get these HTS code things and all of that? And so that is just my background, software guy turned trade guy at some point. I've done it sort of all over. I've been in Australia, Thailand, Florida, Utah, helping people do things like that. And now I am actually, previously I was with Motorola, helping them. You might have heard of them doing stuff for software for law enforcement. But now I am with HTS Hero. And our whole goal is basically just to reduce import risk for customs brokers and importers with engineered compliance. So sort of taking an engineering angle to compliance, making sure all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and that's kind of our focus. Our start right now that we focus on full-time is smarter, quicker classifications. So just making them as easy as possible, as hard to get wrong as possible, and as documented as possible with as much proof as possible. We help customs brokers, US importers, etc. And in the last 9 months, we've helped that group of people generate 1,300 classifications, all sort of being used for imports, the whole thing. And I wrote a book on it. So if you guys haven't seen that, feel free, I'll send you a link after this, but it's sort of just the playbook of what I'll go through today and kind of actionable things you can use if you ever want to. So. As promised, today, by the end of this presentation, the goal is to make you able to produce audit-ready classifications very quickly. It may be a lofty goal, but I've seen it happen, and so we'll give it a go. The agenda is pretty clear. Basically, we'll cover why audit-ready is the goal you're aiming at, or should be aiming at, 2 ways to get there, the clear framework and the open method, and then the one everyone loves, which is how to do it 10 times faster. So, and after that, we'll open it up for some questions. Okay, why is audit-ready the goal, and what the heck does that even mean? I think it's something that you see people throw around on socials and everywhere in the industry, and I don't know if a lot of people really like frame it properly, and so it's good to know what it means. For something to be audit-ready, like anything, it just means you can defend it at any time. That means it's ready for an audit, it can be defended. And the question is, why is that something we want for classification specifically? Why do we want it to be able to be defended? Well, in classification, defense is way better than offense. We've all heard the stories of companies trying to sort of tweak things a little bit or change things to get some preferential tariff rates or what have you. It's a mess. It's not something you want to mess with. Like Jamie was saying, like enforcement is really cracking on and they're asking more questions. And so playing defensively is kind of what creates stability long-term for both brokers themselves, kind of from the liability perspective, and for companies long-term when people start to ask questions years down the road. And so defense is what we're looking for. And also because the cost of misclassification can be huge. You guys may have also seen some of the cases that have come out over the past 10 years on this, but millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for certain companies if they had the wrong code for a certain car part, what have you. And kind of tangibly, the cost is profits, right? Companies are losing profits. There's also the kind of security of, if you're a broker, the license, if you've been doing things a bit ad hoc, but also import delays. Like companies have true mandates and agreements they have with customers to make sure things are stocked up and delivery times and all that. And import delays can be a huge impact. So fundamentally, companies just can't afford this. They don't want to lose profits. They can't afford delays. It causes a lot of problems with the logistics. And if you can become the person who can prevent that from happening, you become the hero. Right? And so defensively, you become a hero. It's kind of a silent badge of honor that people in compliance wear, but it's a noble one for sure. And if you can become that person, you gain trust, not just with your coworkers and your boss, but with your company, with your clients that you serve, and in some cases, even with CBP, if you have a good record. So worth having because more trust is more opportunity. And if you can make people feel completely relaxed, whether it's your clients or your company, and they feel this way, then you're likely to have way more opportunities that come at you and just more trust. And so not a bad thing to have. So in summary, a good classification isn't one that seems correct or just sounds correct to your ear right away. It's one that you can defend, and proof is really the only way you get there. Proof with cross rulings, proof with GRI logic, proof with legal notes from sections and chapters, what have you. But one thing I thought that was really interesting was, where's the system for this? Like the GRIs exist and they kind of tell you what to do, but where's the system where anyone can follow it, whether you're the 20-year veteran, 30-year veteran, or someone who just started? Like, where is the system to actually just step by step, here's how I can produce a classification with good evidence? Said differently, how do we produce classifications we can defend? And in 2024, I sort of looked around and I looked, and it didn't seem like one existed. I mean, there were courses that existed for becoming a customs broker and things like that, but a simple system you could just follow to classify didn't really seem to exist out there. At the time, there were sort of two things people were doing. They were either using AI, like ChatGPT directly, and sometimes they'd nail it and they'd get the answer right away, right? For really simple things like a very standard TV, sure, you'd get it because there'd be somewhere on the internet, there'd be documentation about it. And so you were happy, you got a good result right away, and maybe you even got good evidence. But a lot of the times, all those systems, they just don't have access to live data or the wrong data. They make up evidence. I've seen people have sent me ChatGPT responses saying, we don't need what you have. And the cross rulings they sent from ChatGPT didn't even exist, which was, I mean, good for me to deal with, but a funny thing. And they also, like, those machines tend to generalize the product. So, you know, what kind of ports does the TV have? How was it manufactured? What was the process? Who is it intended for? Is it a smart TV? A lot of those details tend to get missed, and then inevitably the classification sort of changes by a little bit, and you're off by one. So those are just a couple of the problems. Again, AI is great. It helps a ton. It is right often, but it's got a lot of drawbacks, especially when it comes to defense, like we said. The other thing people were doing was fully manual. I mean, I was just talking to Jamie, and there's a lot of people who have been doing this for years and years and years, and they know how to do it, no doubt about it. They're extremely accurate. They've done it a million times. They're detailed, they have good evidence. We just add someone in here. Hey, Paul, welcome.
Thank you.
So yes, there's sort of two options. You can do the AI or you can do it manually. And a lot of pros and cons to both. Manual, it's a little bit slower. And I think the biggest thing here is the blind spots, especially for people who have been doing it either for a really long time or just starting. They think they know right away when someone says the product, what chapter it might exist in or what the heading might be. But again, you might have missed something, or you're just kind of stuck in sort of the parts of the HTS that you know. And so both have their pros and cons. And it became really clear to me at the time that sort of a combination of the two was the way forward. The pros of this were it was fast because you could have all the suggestions from AI that you could manually review, which is sort of the way moving forward everyone is going, with the accuracy, with the evidence, but it's something new that you need to learn. And I think the fact that some of you even show up to events like this means that you're kind of interested in learning new things. So that kind of drawback is a little bit easier to deal with. So anyways, I did what any good engineer would do at the time. I was living in Australia and I was helping a large tech company around the world build products for law enforcement. And I quit my job. I terminated my Australian visa, and I spent about 1.5 years studying cross rulings, GRIs, and the HTS and all of its little corners and edge cases for about 1.5 years. And I built it myself. And the product of that is, like I said earlier, it's been a system that's been used by customs brokers, large importers, all of that to produce a bunch of classifications that are starting to really protect people. Every single one of them comes with a defense file, and it's going really well. Yeah, it's used by all these different people, importers with 1,000+ employees, all of that. The name of the system is the Clear Door system. So here's where we'll actually get into sort of the frameworks for doing this stuff properly, where as you classify, you generate the right evidence as you do it. so that at the end of it, you've just got a file with a classification that defends itself, and you can pull it whenever you need to. Just have the proof, right? Proof of cross rulings, proof of GRIs, all of that stuff. And when I sat down to build the system, probably after, I'd say 6 months or so of talking to brokers, classifying a bunch of things, it became clear that it was really just two fundamental aspects of classifying. The first one was understanding the product, and this is by far the most important thing you can do. Like if you understand the product, you've spent 80 cents of your classification dollar. You get that right. The other part of the classification, which is finding the best evidence for it and finding the right candidate, becomes much easier. And so two things. And coincidentally, there is just two frameworks that came from that. So just two systems that are pretty easy to learn that anyone can follow to generate that evidence and find that evidence. The first one is called the CLEAR framework. The second one is the DORM method, which we'll go through next. But just to really hammer home all of the sort of concepts here and what we've talked about, you want to defend it. Defense is way better than offense in classification, and having evidence is really the way that you defend classifications. You just got to remember to write it down and produce it as you go. And that's a lot easier these days, which we'll get into a bit later. But it's all about stacking evidence and being able to pull that evidence later on. And with the new systems that I sort of came up with here that people have been using, you kind of start stacking it in a couple of ways. You get clear product evidence. Do you have the product specifications from the manufacturer? What details do you have about that? How much do you know about how the product is composed, how it's been engineered, what application it's used for? Is it for industrial purposes, commercial purposes, household purposes, etc.? So if you can get clear on the product, great start. That's great evidence. Beyond that, you want to have evidence for the different levels of the classification. And I think this is the one where most people will go wrong, just because it takes the most time traditionally. And so what evidence do you have with multiple different headings kind of competing for each other? What section notes, what chapter notes do you have that support one or refute another? Same thing with subheadings. And then finally, cross-ruling support. If you can start stacking all of this evidence, and you can hand a file to CVP whenever they ask you with the 28, basically, hey, how do you prove this? Right? It's going to look a lot better. You're going to be able to do it a lot quicker. It won't seem like you're scrambling, and it really starts to protect you in the case of audit. And altogether, like I said, all of this just builds a classification defense file. That's not a formal thing. It's something I've come up with, but fundamentally, everyone's been using them and loving them, and it's just a way to protect yourself. So let's get into the actual frameworks, starting with the CLEAR framework. And basically, all this answers is how do you quickly understand any product? Right? And fundamentally, if you don't deeply understand the product, your chances of misclassification skyrocket. So let's think about sandwiches for a second. Right? If you look at this simple sandwich, you might say, right, tomato, cheese, lettuce. That's what they've got on that. Right? It's a very simple understanding of a sandwich. It's kind of a 2D understanding of the product, but it's a little bit gray, right? You want to get to a point where every product looks like this to you, which, especially as a broker, if you're not in a company that produces the same things all the time, if you're a broker that helps other people, kind of understanding all these different products from different industries and different backgrounds can be difficult. But fundamentally, if you can take that time to understand products a little bit better, this view of the world is one that will serve you really well. It'll prevent a lot of mistakes. And the question is, how do you go from the 2D to the 3D, or how do you get clear? Right? And so the simple framework for getting clear: composition, logical function, engineering, or how was it made, application of the product, and then finally, what records do you have for the product that actually defend and say the thing is what it is, right? And we'll go through each of these really quickly next here. So composition, what's it actually made of? If it's a liquid or a chemical, what are the different substances that make it up? If it's a t-shirt, what percentages is it of cotton, of silk, of cashmere, what have you? What are the different components that make it up? And then very importantly, what about the product gives it what's called the essential character, right? And so if you have a sweatshirt that's made of 80% cotton and 20% polyester, right? And that's a very kind of simple example, but the cotton is the kind of controlling material in that case. And so if you are classifying at that point and you don't know the substances as well, you might choose a different heading or subheading at some point. So that one's kind of straightforward, but it's important to get right. Lesser known ones are the functional ones. So what's the logical function of the product? What does it actually do, right? How does it function? What's it used for? What's the mechanisms that make it happen? Especially for things like appliances or technology, knowing how they function really matters. Is it powered by hydraulics or springs or mechanical, electrical? How does the function actually perform? Right, that becomes important in a lot of cases when you're classifying, especially when you get into the GRIs. So high level here again, but just kind of touch on these quickly. Engineering, how was it made? What were the actual manufacturing processes? How was it assembled? Is it a bike in a box and it's just half of the bike or just a couple parts of the bike? Is it the full bike? What's the level of finish? This is kind of very HTS speak, if you will. A lot of the headings will talk about whether or not it's fully assembled or not, and getting this right can kind of change the classifications. So, application, how is it used? Is it for children? Is it for adults? Is it for women? Is it for men? A lot of questions to ask here, but who's the typical user? Who's the person who's going to use this thing? Is it used in the house? Is it used in a restaurant setting? Is it commercial? Is it industrial? Application matters a lot. Right, and as you're going through these, I'll give you guys a template. It's part of the book that I have, but you just want to answer all these questions as best you can. You can use, even if you want to, ChatGPT or anything else to kind of get an understanding of the product that you're kind of classifying. Very common ways things are manufactured. That can help. It can also be a little bit misleading. What you really want to do is go to the supplier or the manufacturer directly and just ask them these questions. And a lot of the times, if you just send them the form, they'll be able to fill it out or give you the data sheets about how it's actually built, made, constructed. So, and on that note, basically, the R in clear is, what proof do you have, right? Do you have something from the manufacturer that says, here's exactly how it's made, here's the manuals, here's the data sheets, right? You want to track all that stuff down, and you want to write all of this stuff down. You want to put everything in a folder somewhere. And then you'll use that in your next step, which is the actual classification part. But worth understanding that ideally, take the time, take the 5 to 10 minutes to either send the email to the manufacturer or back to the importer and say, hey, can you give me any clarity on this? I need to have a better understanding to get this right. It's worth taking the time. It'll change things a lot for you. And then once you have all that proof, you can use it later with the systems we have in place. And if you do that well, you kind of check off the first part of a good classification, an audit-ready classification, which is understanding the product. And next, the fun part, and honestly, the easier part in some cases, which is finding the candidate with the best evidence. Right. So if we look back at our evidence stack, our first one's done. If you've done this well, you fill out the template, off you go. You can use it on the next step. And the next step is the door method, which is how to find the candidate with the best evidence. And the best evidence is important. It's not necessarily the evidence that you feel is right. It's just the evidence that the HTS says is right, or that cross rulings say are right. And you want to do this, and I know everyone hates this, you want to do this at every level. Every level, which sounds insane. It sounds like it's going to take you a lot of time, but doing this for sections and chapters and headings and subheadings and stepping through the HTS one by one, that's how you actually build up a defense file that is extremely strong. And so the door method is how you do that. It's a 4-step process. It's called discover candidates, obtain evidence for and against each of those candidates, objectively select the one that's got the best evidence, and then repeat that until you have 10 digits. Right? And I know you're probably sitting there thinking, that sounds like a lot of work. Sounds a little bit different than the way I do it now. And the question is why? And it's always good to remember that audit ready is the goal. Like taking the extra 10 minutes, if you're doing this manually, and way less time if you're doing this with the help of some tools, taking the time to do this is very worth it when it comes to the defense side of classifications. And if audit ready is the goal, evidence stacking is the process. And what you want to do is open every door, right? Leave no stone unturned. And by going level by level, you find every possible candidate, like even the one that you know maybe not right, having proof that that one's not right for this reason because of section note 3A, right? That's important. That helps a lot. It helps you put a case together that says that's why this is the way it is. And then you can kind of have your legal note references, your cross rulings, your GRIs all in one place for every level. And you go from a place where you only had your evidence about the product to all the evidence for cross rulings in every single level of the HTS. So how do we do it? What is it? How does it work? Let's step through that. And then after this, we'll do a demo showing you exactly how to do it yourself. So discover candidates. We want to find every possibly relevant candidate, not just the first one that jumps out to you right away, but every possibly relevant candidate. This helps you negate others that are an okay fit, but maybe not exactly right, and then move on. And so we start at the section level, and there are 22 of those. They look like this, right? Is it vaguely an animal or an animal product? Is it vegetables, etc.? Right. And so we want to go through all of these and pick any of the ones that sound roughly relevant. Any of them. Normally you want to pick 2 or 3. A lot of the times what you end up is picking 1, and then you end up picking, I think it's section 20, which is miscellaneous products. And at the very least, you want to have both of those so that you can look inside of those and see the chapters that might be relevant. And why do you do this? Right? It's really just to avoid blind spots. Like anytime you are picking a candidate in the HTS and you eliminate a section or a chapter that could somewhere in it have a heading that makes sense, just if you didn't think of it, you eliminate the entire part of the HTS. And so you just want to be over-inclusive to begin with, and then you can trim things down very quickly as you go. Next is finding the evidence. This is the fun part. This is the part that traditionally takes the most time. You're going through a bunch of PDFs and you're going through cross rulings and you're searching on the database, and it takes time. It's very worth it, but it definitely takes time. But if you do it and you document it, you have this file that can exist to defend your classifications for years. So it's worth doing. And the goal of this is just finding legally sound evidence, right? It's not about finding necessarily the title of a heading or a subheading that sounds right. You want to use what the CBP has said is the legally relevant evidence, which is your cross rulings and your legal notes. Right? Those are sort of the ultimate source of truth. You also have your explanatory notes, and a lot of people flag that as like, why don't you mention that, Brendan? It's really useful, and CBP even uses them in the rulings they put out, but it's actually technically not listed anywhere as being legally binding. It's just a useful resource the way they talk about it. So still useful, but I don't include it here for that reason. So, okay, the first O, objectively select. You want to find the candidate with the best evidence and document it. That's it. This one's very simple, very straightforward. Important part here is documenting your reasoning, right? If you're going to do this manually, just circle the notes, highlight them in a PDF, or clip them out with a screenshot, put it in a file, the same file that you used earlier with your product evidence, and keep going. Repeat. So once you've done this for sections, you have, let's say, 2 or 3 sections. You look at each of those sections, look at the chapters inside of them, and you find chapters that make sense. Once you find chapters that make sense, then you can go and you can find the evidence. You can select the ones that maybe you want to keep around, and then you go to headings. Now, once you get to headings, that's when it becomes a lot more simple, the 4-digit headings, because at that point, once you pick one, there is only really one you can pick as you proceed. So if you pick the one with the best evidence, after that, it's just who's that heading's children, and then you find those children, which one's the best one, find the evidence based on the notes, on and on and on and on after that. So the whole goal of this is just building up the strongest defense possible at each level, up to 10 digits. And that's how you have a really rock solid audit-ready classification. And if you do this well enough, you end up with a defense file that has not only clear product evidence, but evidence for sections, chapters, headings, subheadings as you go. And then you also have cross rulings that support all of this. Right? And I'll show you how to grab those cross rulings and reference them as you go. And if you've done that well, congrats. You've produced an audit-ready classification. But I'm sure some of you are thinking this. It sounds like this is going to take a lot of time, won't it? Right. And so now let's get into the fun part of how to actually do this much, much quicker. So how do we classify 10 times faster? I'm sure you've seen everyone talking about this with AI lately. Like I mentioned earlier, sure, people use ChatGPT. Sometimes it gets it right. but there's so many limitations to it, and it doesn't have access to live data. It kind of has blind spots as well. And so how do we do this in a safe way? If the whole goal is defense, how do we do it in a safe way? And it's worth taking 2 minutes right now to say, why does classification speed matter? Right? Like if we just want to make sure it's right, why does the speed matter? Logistics is basically the answer to that. Classification is really only one small part of US imports. Not only that, it's usually only one tiny part of your job. There's a lot of other things competing for your attention. And beneath classification, there's things like origin, valuation, all of your different calls, emails, and texts, coordinating with people, free trade agreements, regulations, etc. Right, and so there's a lot more to an import than just classification. Not only that, it's a blocker. Classification is often a blocker for many things like determining PGAs, determining tariffs, whether or not there's anti-dumping duties, and for certain products, if certain quotas have been exceeded, you only figure that out after you've got the HTS code. And so you want to get it done, you want to get it done quick. But importantly, most companies and most people don't have a good understanding of the complexity involved in classification. Like they really just think 10-digit code just is, you should be able to go to a database, type in Blender or Mango or whatever, and just get it. But if you showed up today, you probably have a good appreciation that it's a little bit more than that. But in some sense, the people who pay you don't really care, and they sort of expect it to get done quickly. And I'll just hammer this home with one last thing that's a good thing, which is it's possible. Right? It's expected, but it's also possible to get it done. So we'll jump into a quick demo here. What I'll show you guys next is everything we just went over, how it's done in practice. I've already sort of done the prep work for getting clear on a product, and we'll go through just using the door method for that product, using HTS Hero in this case. And you'll just get a chance to see how it does a lot of these things quickly for you, like finding cross rulings, finding legal notes that apply, all of that. So as you go, it helps you avoid your blind spots and just keep moving quickly, and also leaves you in control of doing anything you want to manually. So we'll jump in here quick. Give me just a moment. Okie dokie. So there's just full disclaimer, there's other products out in the world that do this. My purposes for today are just to show you what's possible. Most people are just interested in AI, and they want to see how the heck some of these things are working, or they want to try it for the first time. And I'll give you a sense of how this works and how people are actually moving 10 times quicker and doing it in a way where they generate evidence at the same time. So how most of these things work is, again, you've gotten clear on your product, and let's say in our case, we'll do something that's a little bit complicated. Let's do a frozen seafood mix that is ready to cook in one of those frozen bags. It's got clams, it's got mussels, it's got octopus, and there's other seasonings added for taste. Right? Let's say you have proof that the product is made this way from your manufacturer. Maybe they're in Vietnam, wherever they are, and you've got all the specifications. Right? You do that, and you get going. Now, traditionally, if you want to do this manually, completely fine. At this point, you would just be going through all the different sections and looking section by section, which one makes sense. After that, you go through your chapters. In this case, this is what I mean about AI and humans sort of handing everything off to each other. In this case, you can sort of very quickly find the most likely headings that make sense. And then you can also get an analysis of any legal notes that might apply and cross rulings that might apply to this as well. Right? And so you type in your product description and you get the breakdown. We know it's 40% clams. In this case, that would be the dominating essential nature of the product. And we go on from there. So what you get are 3 headings, right? In this case, 1605, 2106, 0307. In this case, the system is highlighting that probably 1605 is the right one. But on the right side is the most important. Right here, we have a breakdown of each candidate, and we have chapter notes from the HTS that will specifically call out whether or not something that a note matters and whether or not it supports one of these candidates. So, for example, here, chapter note 21E excludes certain things from chapter 21. right? If there's food preparations that have more than 20% of weight of fish or mollusks or whatever, don't look at this chapter, ignore this chapter. And like I was saying earlier, you want different candidates, and you also want evidence that both support and reject certain candidates, right? And so if all of a sudden you can get all of those exact notes and evidence right away, you're in a pretty good position. And so in this case, we've got also the application of the GRIs. In this case, it looks like we only needed GRI 1 to actually quantify that 1605 is probably the right heading. But really quickly, you can just get all the evidence that you need right here. And then you can also jump over to cross rulings. And you'll start to get, if you want to, either you can look up 1605 or you can just look up seafood mix. And right inside of here, you can quickly see there's many rulings from 1996 onwards talking about how maybe 1605 is the one that you want. In this case, 1604, maybe it's made of a different seafood, but you sort of get a sense that probably 16 is the one you're looking for, 1605 in this case, right? And if you wanted to, you could jump into these and you could actually read the text if you wanted to see, okay, does this one talk about seafood that is not the type of seafood that I have? Maybe it doesn't have clams or mussels or octopus. Maybe it's just fish. Maybe it's just squid, right? And so a really quick way to sanity check yourself. After you do that, you've done your research, you as the human verify this, right? So you get all your evidence in one place. That's the help of the AI. And then you select on your own. In this case, just for demonstration purposes, we'll probably choose 1605 and proceed. But all this evidence along the way, this is kept for you, and you can review it afterwards and include it in the reports that you'll either send to customers or that you'll use for your own internal company to defend your classifications. So once we click on 1605, this is when we move to the next level. So now that we've selected a heading, a 4-digit heading, now we move on to the next level. And here, there's no more discovery because all of the children of that one we selected they exist. But again, you get your analysis, right? And so here, you can kind of get useful information about different types of fish in this case. We can see that chapter 16, note 2 is talking about a food preparation with more than 20% of its weight being of mollusks in this case. And so it just happens to turn out that clams, mussels, and octopus are mollusks. And so it also highlights that for you. And there's a note to back it up. And then we can also talk about the GRIs as well. So we click on mollusks and we move on again. Here it's further specifying what types of mollusks we want to talk about. Now, in some cases, this is where you'll start getting very detailed. And I always tell people, if you're going to use AI systems, you're going to want to put in a product description that's as detailed as possible. Because if you miss certain details, it's not going to try to find notes for you that apply. And it might also zoom in on something that's a little bit too specific, right? And so in this case, that happened, and this is on purpose. So here we have it zooming in on maybe 1605.56 being the right option. Now, at that point, you can go, okay, is this just clams, or is it actually a mix of seafood? And so of your options you have here, maybe you go other. But the other thing that you can do is come up here and go to cross rulings, and you can type in, if you're not sure, 1605.59, and you can see if there are any cross rulings about 1605.59 or 56. In this case, none exist. None have been actually produced by CBP about this, but it's a really quick way for you to sanity check all these different cross rulings that maybe defend against a given product. You can also just type in seafood or seafood mix. And we'll open up this one, and we'll see that in 1996, CBP was talking about, because of chapter 16, note 2, it does actually say, yeah, this is a combination of seafood with other seasonings. And yeah, 1605 in this case. It happens to turn out that 90 doesn't exist anymore because this is from, let's see, this is from 1996, but you get the point. So we'll just choose other, and we'll move on. And then finally, we get to the last level, which is 10 digits. And we can see that this is for products containing fish meat. In our case, our product does not have fish meat. It's all mollusks. And so we choose other. Right, and so, okay, you've got your 10 digits. What now? I've classified, and along the way, I've got all these notes to maybe back it up. What do I do now? Well, if you are a broker or an importer, you may know the country of origin. Let's just say it's like, I don't know, let's say it's from Chile. And the most important thing at this point is notes. We said we want to defend our classifications. We want notes. What you can do at this point, if you're comfortable with the classification you've got, you can either go back and change anything and find any HTS code you want, or you can say, I'm happy with this. I think this is good. Let me actually put this in review, and my team can quickly review it, or someone else can review it for me. But what you really want to do before anything else is write down why you chose what you did. And so at this point, you can write any notes in here. So you jump back to the first level where it was talking about, is it 1605? Is it 2106? And maybe you'd grab something like, hey, chapter note 21 says food preparations with more than 20% by weight shouldn't be included. You'd maybe grab that and you'd say something like, I was considering, ... And because of note 21, note 6, chapter 21, food preparations, Right, and all you have to do is grab the notes that you believe, as a human, actually apply and defend your classification. You just grab them. You can grab any of the logic, you can grab any of the GRIs, and it's all there for you. You can also grab any cross rulings that popped up that support exactly what you want to do, and you can reference all of those inside of your overview here. There's some people that are trying to do this automatically. I think that's too risky. Trying to use AI to kind of grab the right things, to me, that gets rid of the whole purpose of having the good judgment in defending yourself. So I really recommend doing this step manually. It's worth it, and it lets you to build up a defense file that has really good logic, really good reasoning, and if someone asks you a question a year from now, you'll have the good answer to it. And so once you have that, sort of the final thing you might do is generate a report. So you can put it in your records, your files for later on, or you can upload, like if you have a company logo, you can upload your logo, and all of a sudden you can take that report and you can send it to customers. So it'll have your logo on it. It'll have all your classification defense. And I'll show that to you guys here now. Let me just open it up. Right, so after you finish everything, there you go. Imagine this is your logo or whatever. You can say who did the classification, what the item was, what the classification code is. Here's your basis for your classification. And then you can have sort of the whole classification breakdown of first I chose this, then I chose this, then I chose this. And if you want to, a disclaimer for your customer or for your internal purposes even as well. And this here is what becomes your classification defense file. I've had brokers send me these back saying, the basis for classification will be 2 pages long. They get really excited about it because they have all this defense that backs them up, and they're saying that the customers love it. But you can make this as simple as you want or as light as you want. Again, you'll always have the evidence for the actual classification back in the system, but it's really worth it to generate that report to sort of timestamp an audit log for what you were thinking at the time and sort of the information that was leading you to think that this was the right classification. I'll leave it at that. And then we'll jump back over into sort of the presentation here quick. We just did our demo. And now we'll just do a summary. So wrapping everything up, the first thing you want to do is get clear on the product, right? I'll send you guys the templates, like I said, after this about what you can send to manufacturers to actually get the right data. But if you get the right information about what it is you're classifying, your job's half done, more than half done. So use that, do that. It takes 5 to 10 minutes and it's really worth it. Once you have that information, that's when you apply all of the AI. If you're going to use it, you can just use the frameworks I mentioned alone. The book talks about how you can do that. So feel free, absolutely feel free, but get clear is the most important thing. Then you want to, like I said, use the door method, open every door, like check every section, check every chapter. It's really easy to fall sort of blind to the different, your own biases around, I've seen a product like this before, and it was under 1605 or it was under 4201. It's really worth just going step by step every time and getting the evidence that supports the candidate. So do it. And while you do it, document everything. Just write it down as you go, right? If you're going to use one of these systems, it'll kind of do it for you. But if you're going to do it manually, be sure just to write it down. Chapter 16, note 1, cross-ruling HQ 370225. Write it down. Even if you just leave yourself a bread trail to go back to when you don't have phenomenal notes, it goes very, very far. And if you do use AI, and this is probably important for maybe most of you in this call, if you do use AI, never just trust it. Like if you're just going to open up ChatGPT or Gemini, you've probably heard this before, but it's really worth saying again, never just trust it. It may get it right first try. You might be asking it like, how are bicycle frames normally manufactured? What's the process from engineering side of things, right? You might just ask it for an HTS code for something. Never just trust it. For sure, you want to always double check everything. And maybe more importantly, if you are going to use a vendor that helps you do some of this stuff, there's really 3 things you want to just make sure before you kind of engage. And it's what version of the HTS they're operating on, and can they guarantee you that it's the most recent one? This is more important for tariff purposes because HTS codes don't change too much. But even just 2 months ago, there was, I think, 571 codes discontinued, and very few people even saw that happen or knew about it. And so that's worth knowing. And finally, secondly, rather, are they actually using real HTS notes? Right. The reason why ChatGPT gets this stuff wrong so often is it's not actually referencing the actual notes in the whole HTS. It's just finishing sentences. And so just ask, hey, how do you guys actually pull HTS notes to show there's proof for each of these candidates that I'm going to type in? Because if you don't have the live notes and the real notes, it will make things up. And then the biggest one maybe is, are they compliant with the cross-ruling that came out a couple of months ago? There was this cross-ruling that came out, you may have heard of it, 350.722. It basically said any vendor who is a software company who is providing help with classifications, they might technically be doing customs business if they're providing you candidates beyond 6 digits. You might have noticed it during the demo, but after the 6-digit level, we don't provide any recommendations thereafter. It's just information. It's just maybe look at this cross-ruling. Hey, do you know that the definition of a mollusk is technically this? And it leaves it at that. Many companies sort of, when this ruling came out, sort of adopted and doubled down and said, no, we're going to keep doing all the way to 10 digits. Some kind of are playing it more safe, but just be sure to ask about that because you could end up in a situation where months down the line they get audited and kind of you could have issues with your data or maybe they just overnight have to shut down. So just ask that question. That's it from me. Any questions from the group here? I know I flew through that just for the sake of time here, but any questions from any of you guys?
I do have a question about, I seen how you could download, it's just that like 1 or 2 couple pages, but for the full like process, is that downloadable or does that just stay on your site?
I have, so for me, I've enabled that for certain customers who have asked for it. It's normally just for brokers, just because I always say, try to do this part manually. Like if you're gonna build a defense file for a classification, just taking what's been analyzed by the AI, like don't just take that and just dump it into a file. That's kind of why it's left to be a manual thing, is take the bits and pieces from that you have sanity checked and put that into your own defense. But some customers they said, hey, we just want to dump this into a big dump and put it into one big file. And then afterwards, we will process it on our own. And I say, okay, fair enough. Like, and I enable that for them. But yeah, it's possible. But I always just caution it, just because it's like, don't just take that and use that as a defense, especially if you're going to give it, I guess, to a client. But yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Because for me, I feel like my big pain points are that as a small broker, I have small to medium customers, and a lot of times they don't even know their damn product. You know, I'll be like, what's the material breakdown? It's some kind of metal. I'm like, yeah, okay. What kind of metal? Is it aluminum? Is it steel? Is it? And sometimes they don't even know. So it does get very difficult to do things when you don't even have good information. But
yeah, and that can get tricky too, because even if you go to the client, like they have to go to their manufacturer, and it can kind of become a back and forth. Like I said, I do have like a template that you can send to them, that they can send to their manufacturer to just get this stuff. And if you have a good relationship with them, they just start doing it on their own before they send stuff to you, because they hate going back and forth with you 10 times before you know. So you probably know this very well. So
yeah, for sure.
I just want to back up here a bit. When you mentioned about AI, yes, you don't trust all the information that it's giving to you. Well, yeah, sometimes you have to look at OGD, other government department. For example, what you're showing about seafood, that's highly regulated by FDA. Yeah. So AI won't tell you that. You would get, yes, if you cross ruling and everything, but you need to know the human intervention here is you need to know exactly is this regulated by OGD? In Canada, FDA, CFIA. So we need to go to extra level. That's one point. Next thing is about knowing your product. The product description is essential, very important. But who is classifying the goods, particularly for a large custom broker? Is the customs rater. They're the guy who's sitting there typing 125 lines per night. And they don't know, okay, what is the description of the goods? What's the composition of it? And the actual end use of the product is vital in order for you to classify the goods. So the sales rep that goes out and pick up the big accounts or the preferred accounts, the guys, they just come back and said, yes, here's what the past brokers were doing. Let's just plug the HS in, build your portfolio. This is what the customs rater sometimes does. If they get it's in there, or we're just going to have to base it on the description. But sometimes a lot of it is just to avoid paying duties, GST, or taxes.
Yeah. It's no good. It's definitely tricky. Like the human side of classification, I think, is the hardest. Like I said, once you know the product and you've gotten clear on it, which is the hardest part, everything else becomes a bit more simple after that. To your point too, Paul, like once you've classified, what sort of PGAs are going to become involved? What agencies do I have to deal with or do clearances with? And a lot of that happens after you classify, but all of it's worth digging into.
And do you need a license? Do you need permits? Do you need FDA approval to import this stuff? And the logistics part of it, like you said, the classification is just 5% of it, but the 95% of it deals with the other PGA. Do I need to import?
I don't remember if I know you kind of zipped in early. I'll just go back to this this part here, Paul. Sorry for the screen flashing. A moment.
And while you do that, I remember the ruling that came out about beyond the 6-digit, which is the international by WTO, and where CBP clearly make the ruling that anything beyond this have to be a licensed custom broker that be part of that intervention, that human intervention.
Yeah, I think it's because they saw all the issues happening with it beyond. Their idea is like, if you only have 6 digits, you can't import. It's not possible. And
Oh,
so at least to the US.
Well, US
Yeah.
and Canada, 10-digit maximum.
But this is the slide I was talking about here is, once you do have that classification, which is the big blocker, then absolutely you got to go find those PGAs, figure everything out after that, and
Quotas, yeah.
move on. Yeah.
Anti-dumping, countervailing duty, yeah.
So good point. Any other questions from the group here?
Well, the cross ruling is good. How about, and that's United States, but WCO itself that come up with the coding system, the digital harmonized coding system, they have their ruling as well, right? International?
I believe so. I haven't seen many people reference those in their own reports, like the brokers that I've talked to. It's usually just the cross rulings because it's like right from the horse's mouth, if you will, on they said it should be classified this way, and it's a really good piece of evidence for US imports anyways. Yeah.
Because sometimes in the harmonized system, there are gray areas, which even those who are members of WCO have to go back to WCO. Could you clarify this?
Yeah.
And then they do for all of its members, they would come up with a ruling so that everyone benefits from it.
Mm.
But then how many rulings get revoked too?
That's true. As they update with the harmonized system, I think every 5 years or they update to the subheading level. Yeah, it may revoke them.
Well, they revoke them and put them in completely different chapters. Like it's not even because of a change in the system. Like they just say, no, never mind. That wasn't right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they can't even get it right, but we're supposed
to. But you better get it right. But you better.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. So the elephant in the room is price. Is what would something like this cost a small broker? That's where I feel like I get pushed out a lot because I'm a 2-person office. Like
So I can only speak for me, right? Like my purpose here today was just like, here's what you should be thinking about when you classify. Here's what you should be thinking about when you choose a vendor. The next kind of thing I have from us is like, go try it for free.
Mm-hmm.
Like, go ahead. I think you get up to 5 free. And then for showing up today, you get 50% off. Feel free if you want to scan this. Right now, like it depends on the company. Right now, we have 3 basic tiers. It's either $40 a month if you do a smaller amount of classifications, and then if you do many more and you're just a single person, then it's $80 is sort of our cap that we have for it, and that gives you a bunch of classifications. And then if you have a team and you want to have people review things, there's different pricing for teams. Like if you have a junior person and you want to approve it, or you want to have them do most of the work, whatever. But $40 a month is like the starter for small shops, maybe like yours. I don't know how many classifications you do per month, but $40 a month is the entry point. And then $80 from there for way more. So that's just us. There's other ones, but that's us.
Okay. All right. I would like to kind of try it out and see how it works. I would like to keep though, because I'm a hoarder with information. I would like the full thing just to show me where I started and how I ended up, instead of retyping it all. You know what I mean? Where I can maybe retype a couple sentences, but I want to be able to go back and be like, oh yeah, I see, because I put this in that, and this was the ruling I looked at, and blah, 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 you know?
Yeah, I can, if you want to set up the account and just like shoot me an email, or I'll grab yours afterwards and I can enable that for you, and you can see how you feel about it.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions I had.
Anything else from anyone? No worries, Molly. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, Brandon. I appreciate inviting me to the chat group there. I did learn a lot. I myself, as an educator and a licensed custom broker, I bring some of it to my classroom, and some of it we use. I would look into game making.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, Brendan. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
I know.